I am Joel McLeod.
I'm Roland,
and welcome to the 905 Roundup. This episode, we're taking a look closer to home in Halton, closer to Burlington, as we have a few updates and a couple stories we've been talking about. Actually, only one story we've been talking about. Roland, what's new with Burlington City Council?
Well, if you listen to Burlington's Mayor, Marianne Mead Ward, it's that the council, and she in particular, have been completely vindicated by the closed session meeting investigation that was carried out by the city's, the company appointed to do this on behalf of the city, which is a lawyer, Ed and Berlis, LLP. And the mayor posted a few days ago about, how this says that, the city completely did everything right, and the stramash and that arose from reporting that the councillor for Ward 4 to the Integrity Commissioner, and her criticisms of the council were, reporting her was completely justified and her complaints were completely unjustified. However, that's not how I read that report necessarily. I mean, if you want to read it that way, you can. There's a number of problems. There's a general problem and a specific problem. The specific problem with the report is that, line by line, it looks at particular meetings that says, should a closed session meeting, not should a closed meeting have happened, but could a closed meeting be held justifiably on this subject? And in each case it says, yes, a closed meeting could be done. This was justifiable. This was a justifiable decision on behalf of the city, because in each case there's a legal matter at stake. My problem with that is no one ever disputed that. The dispute was not that the city has to do certain things in closed session. We know that. It's written right there in the Municipal Act. We understand that. The dispute is about how that technical definition of which is quite narrow, of what has to be done in closed session, has been used as a way to put an umbrella over an entire subject and take that out of discussion. So again, in the case of the Bateman School purchase debate, which will come on to another aspect of that shortly, everybody knows that you cannot discuss the cost that is going to be paid, or the cost that's being negotiated by the city for the purchase of the land. That has to be, just as if you're buying a house, if you're putting a bid in for a house that you want to buy, you're obviously not going to tell your competitors what you're willing to pay for it. That's information that you don't want them to have, because it helps them put in a counter bid. Everybody gets that. What we don't get is the fact that that's a way to stop discussion of the amount of land that's being purchased, the costs of upgrading the property after it's been purchased, the wisdom of carrying out a purchase in the first place. All these things were also put into closed session, so that the public documentation that the public has seen is very, very vague. You get a nice little map of the property, and that's pretty much it. There's no discussion of this thing's full of asbestos, and it's going to cost us so many million to get all the asbestos out. And ultimately, it's the cost of this thing that while aspects of that have to be private, the whole thing doesn't. So I don't think this report gets the mayor off the hook for anything. I don't think it gets the city off the hook for anything.
Here's the thing. There's a difference between private transactions between parties. If you wanted to buy my house, Roland, and you get into a bidding war with somebody else, the transactions are private between me and the bidder. Because it's a business transaction. The problem, I think, here is that we're getting into a bit of the philosophical problems of politics, is that the city isn't buying it with their money. They're buying it with our money. People of Burlington, their tax dollars. It's a dangerous idea to say, they get to decide how to spend money. no, they should be viewed more as custodians of the treasury of that money, and not opposed to the purchase of Bateman High necessarily, but I just don't have enough information to inform my opinion on it, and to rush headlong into that decision is, I think we're risking trouble, opening ourselves up into all sorts of trouble. I mean, we'll get into that issue later on in the episode, but man, oh man, I get the fact that we're so eager to go. And Shawna wasn't just talking about just this. She's talking about the frequency that we're going into in camera meetings with council. That for kind of a blanket argument, oh, we're going to talk about this issue. Yeah, we should. That should be an in camera meeting. Okay, the entire topic is now in camera meeting. I am not comfortable with that. Like, I don't know exactly what it is that you're like. The idea of an in-camera meeting was always like, okay, do we want to purchase it? Can we, what would you use it for? What's the value? Is it a good investment? Or you want to hire or fire somebody? Maybe that's an in-camera. Those would be in-camera meetings. Price tags for this. That's when you could go into in-camera. How much are you willing to spend on it?
And again, with the debates over particular properties that were coming up to the Committee of Adjustment, and that's one of those meetings. One of the ones that Shawna got in trouble for. Shawna Stolte got in trouble for because she mentioned the address to someone. Again, I don't think anyone's really disputing the fact that meeting, the parts of that meeting, because of the legal nature, had to be confidential. The dispute was over the ridiculousness of using an address which was already completely in the public domain. That someone mentioning that address, is a reason to send someone to the integrity commissioner.
Well, here's the thing. Sorry, we were chatting just before we hit record, though, that Shawna's point that she was trying to make was the frequency and the free nature of using in-camera meetings for council meetings that she was having an issue with. She thought the public deserved a right to know a lot more about what was going on in these in-camera meetings. Clearly, I think we can say that something was being said in these doors that Shawna wasn't too comfortable with, and that she thought the public had a right to know what the deliberations were about, and that perhaps these were being used as cover to just hide away from criticism and the discretion of the public. Nowhere in the reports that we've seen come out of City Hall and from the council so far have addressed that issue. There's been no debate on, what, and one of the things that I thought Shawna wanted to bring up was, let's have a city policy, a city council policy on this is when we will enter into in-camera meetings. So that, again, it adds to that transparent nature of the business that the council was trying to conduct. I think that's a very reasonable policy to have on the books. And no one at City Council is bringing that up, which is, to me, kind of troubling. It breeds the concept of this council has something to hide, or this council just doesn't really want us to know what it's doing.
Yeah, Ed and Berlis, and the mayor passes over this particular sentence with a complete lack of significance, but is actually highly significant. That having gone through line by line each of these meetings that they were asked to look at and said, yes, according to the Municipal Act, you can do this. Yes, according to the Municipal Act, you can do this. Which surprised me not at all. At the end of that, they do say, despite this, we do wish to note that the city itself can dictate the content of its report-out obligations, which is report-out obligations are what the city judges it should inform, the extent to which the public should know about what happened in a closed session, right? So what the Ed and Berlis are saying here is it's actually down to the city how much they want to tell the public after they've had a meeting. So the city may be completely acting within its own rules by saying confidential update on a litigation matter, which is the kind of thing that gets put in the agenda, right? Which tells you nothing. But that's the city's decision. It's up to the city to set criteria for what it needs to put in that description, and what it says in the actual minutes after the decisions have been made in closed session. So you can have a closed session meeting, still give fairly fulsome information about what happened at that closed session meeting. That's the point they're making there, which is absolutely key to this whole debate. Now, if I go back in the agendas for 2018 under the old council, you will see, and if you go and look, that they're hardly detailed, but they're a lot more detailed than what we're getting now. It will say a confidential update on property X on Brant Street or property Y on Lakeshore Road. For some reason, at some point, that went away, so that we don't even have that anymore. And really, again, there can be a whole lot of discussion in a closed session meeting that doesn't need to be entirely closed. So it's the blanket coverage which really gets to the core of what Shawna Stolte was talking about, and certainly that I think is a completely fair point. And that paragraph alone, in this regard, just to carry on the quotation, the city has an opportunity to improve the transparency of its decision-making processes by enhancing the report-out practices to include a more substantive briefing to the public following closed session. Read that as not a vindication at all. I mean, I take it as very legalistic, polite way of saying you can do a better job than you have been doing, which absolutely vindicates Shawna, not the mayor. So yeah, were they breaking the law according to Ed and Berlis? No. But it comes down to the thing that, what Ed and Berlis have been asked to judge is, can the city go into closed session on these issues? And they've said yes. That's a very different question from, should the city go into closed session on these subjects? And in that case, it's like, maybe, but that doesn't mean you have to throw a blanket over everything. And that's a very different result. And so, I think the mayor is, the mayor is a very good communicator and very good at putting her side of things, and that's fine. And she's obviously been very keen to counter the stories that have been out there on this. Again, fine. But it's, there's more to this than a complete vindication. And in that one paragraph alone justifies everything that Shawna Stolte did and kind of undermines the point that she somehow lacks integrity and needs to be reported. And there's one final thing I'll say with this whole thing, because it is a really important point. And this is the general point in this. Now, Ed and Berlis, I'm not making any accusations about Ed and Berlis. I'm sure they're a fine company. I don't really know. However, I do know that Ed and Berlis represent a lot of development companies in the 905. They are involved with representing developers in Hamilton and in Burlington, to my knowledge. That's fine. I mean, lawyers do that all the time. They play. You can do that. However, on one hand, Ed and Berlis are paid by the city to be their judge of closed session meetings. So they are paid $15,000, by the way, for a 25-page report. $15,000. I wish I could earn $15,000 for a 25-page report. Yeah, that would be a much better way of making my living. So they're getting $15,000 paid. If they give a bad report to the city, maybe their contract for acting in this way won't be renewed again. So these reports tend to be small c, conservative at best, and at worst there's a potential conflict of interest, because who's paying for this thing? The city is. Again, I'm not remotely accusing any lawyer of impropriety. I wouldn't be stupid enough to do that, and I wouldn't want to do that. However, there is a conflict there when the person who is being asked to judge something is being paid by the person being judged. It's a conflict. It's also a conflict when the same legal company is representing a developer in another city that currently has been complaining about breaches of confidentiality in regard to a property in Ancaster. So they're kind of arguing, they're actually involved in the confidentiality fight themselves in Hamilton. So they've got a dog in this race, so how independent can they be? Now, again, I'm not saying that they're what they're doing isn't right or legal or proper, but it is a conflict. And that's not their fault. That's the way the system is built. It's got conflicts at every level of this integrity commissioners, of how they're paid, of who appoints the integrity commissioners, of who renews those contracts, of when they're renewed. There's conflicts all the way down. It's a broken system. You wouldn't accept it anywhere else.
Let's take a break on that note, and we'll come back to review the more on the Bateman High issue. Okay, and we're back. So as you know, we're kind of focusing on Bateman High this week. The reason why is because the city, after all the scandal and the stories and the coverage of in-camera meetings and the lack of transparency and the questions that are surrounding this, going to be a sizable purchase by the city of Burlington for this block of land, the city finally announced that they were getting around to the public consultation part of this that they're supposed to do. And I pointed out that I had kind of issues with this. I should say that the information that they're putting forward is the city is going to propose a part of the deal would be a land transfer of 5 acres of land in the over by Central High School in exchange for the 12.79 acres of land of the Bateman High School site. You can, if you do the math rudimentary, you understand that's not quite an apples for apples exchange there. So money is going to have. I cannot not see where money is not going to be exchanged for this. That being said, nowhere in the consultation are ballpark figures given. There's no concept of what a upper limit or a lower limit would be expected, or just what the estimated costs, what the market value of the land would be, what the projected costs of renovating. Because the plans that they put forward are, I don't want to say detailed, because I don't think they're that detailed, but it's the concept of, yes, Halton District School Board would retain some site for, I guess, some administrative offices. The city's tech place, their online Burlington Economic Development Corporation's fine to try and grab more tech businesses into the city. The Burlington Public Library would have a small section. The city of Burlington would, which I presume is just going to be the existing public pool that's already there. And then, of course, Brock University would have a sizable part of the site as well. That's all well and good, except we don't know if any contracts have been signed, what the lease agreements would be, and what we would be comfortable with going without. The biggest one to me is the Brock University portion, because has anybody asked Brock if they actually want to move there, or if they're willing to sign like a 20-year lease for that site or something to make it worth our while? Because there's no numbers attached. This is all wishy-washy. This is like, pie in the sky, great things. And that's all well and good. And it sounds like a fantastic thing, but the devils are in the details. And that to me, that we're setting ourselves up for a derailment down the road when it turns out that this little project is going to cost us a big chunk of change.
Yeah, so we're now at this thing where the city has now announced that it's considering this land swap of part of the playing fields of Central High School in downtown Burlington actually belong to the city, which is unusual. Usually they belong to the school board. In this case, the city owns them still. So and we're now seeing this proposal to swap the lands. Kind of do a semi-swap as a way of reducing the cost of the purchase at Bateman by say take this land in downtown and we'll get Bateman cheaper. And then we're bringing in the public consultation part. But the public consultation is being made on the basis of us not knowing and not being allowed to know a huge amount of the detail of this thing, including the cost, where the funds are coming from, which reserve funds. We have good suspicions about a lot of these things, basically because Shawna Stolte put it into the public realm, mentioned a number of kind of north of 50 million as the ultimate cost of the likely ultimate cost of transforming Bateman into whatever it is to become, which is a very big number in context. When cities can't go into debt, they can't take out mortgages, they have to find that money somewhere. They spend it on one thing, then it means another thing may not be purchasable. So it's all very, it's a bit blissful, it's a bit late, and the fact that the city's willing to kind of give away playing fields in downtown Burlington is worrying. Because what if, in the next round of, it was perfectly potential at the last PR review that the Halton trustees could have decided that more than one school had to close. Maybe next time round, Central will close. It depends on the population and number of children living in the neighborhood and all those things. Central was certainly, right up there in the consideration for closure first time around. Well, in that case, we're back to that position where the city's going to go, oh, hey, this parkland that we used to own that we gave away, well, now the developers are going to love that. Let's whack 5 big tower blocks on it. So, this could come back and bite everybody in the bum. But you're doing it now as a way of suggesting to the public that you're going to get Bateman at a knockdown price.
Here's what gets me about is I still have not heard why this transaction is necessary. It says it's a significant and long-term strategic matter that requires the city to continue to share. Yeah, it's long-term. I don't understand what the need is. To me, the big benefit is Brock University. They get a site for their presumably for their Department of Education or Faculty of Education to set up some classrooms there. My question is then why doesn't the university or Brock University buy the land? Why can't they raise some capital and buy it and we lease the land from them? Like why wouldn't that save us some money and give us some flexibility in terms of how we use it? I don't understand why this urgency to we must purchase this land, we must own this again, or own this land because
it's ultimately because 2 of the more senior members on council, namely the mayor and the ward councillor Paul Sharman, said they were going to do it years ago.
Right,
and it's the kind of thing that it's the kind of bricks and mortar solid, and school properties are tied in people's minds, in Burlington at least, with the idea of public spaces. The problem is we ain't buying any public space of significance with the Bateman transaction. We're buying what will be a parking lot. And sure, there's no, I'm not downplaying the importance of community centres and all those great things and libraries and the rest of it. It's just, is this necessarily the best way to achieve those ends? And it is the best money to use to achieve those ends. There's all kinds of, the library already exists. We're just moving it from one place to another. Community centre, yeah, great. Is this the best place for it? Is it the most cost-effective way? And if you're doing it on the basis of preserving public space, then it's a duff deal because there ain't no green space that being purchased.
Well,
any significant amount of green space.
Well, what I think what we need to know is at this point, if you're going to come asking the public for consultation, you got to give us some numbers as well in terms of what you're willing to spend on this. Maybe not what the bid for this the site will be. But I would say, what are we looking for if we buy this? If we are willing to buy this, what are we looking for in terms of total capital investment into this to go in and renovate it? Because we'll be the landlord, so it's not as if we just hand the Brock section to Brock and say, "Hey, you guys design it how you want." No, we're the landlord, so they would come to us and say, "You will design this. We'll pay the lease, but you put up what we need into that section for us." And the same would go with the Burlington Economic Development Corporation with Tech Place and the Halton District School Board. Like there's a lot of unforeseen costs here that, quite frankly, I'm not sure the city. I don't think it's in the city's best interest to start going down this road. A lot of these things always kick over 10 more costs that you didn't anticipate, and it's a recipe for disaster, in my opinion.
You're buying a property with known problems. The known problems being asbestos. I guess the kids who went to school there for the last 30 years dealt with it, but whatever. The whole thing is problematic, and around the corner, in a matter of almost weeks now, is approaching the kind of let's call it the elephant in the room, or the Goliath in the park, which is LaSalle Park, and what Hamilton's going to want there. Mm-hmm. That's going to be pricey. But I think in terms of money being spent for something that I think if Burlington lost, I think it's very unlikely that we'll end up losing it. But if Burlington did end up somehow losing LaSalle Park, because basically didn't have the money because of Bateman, I think people would feel that was a pretty poor deal.
Here's my thinking is that if you go in, we're gonna get LaSalle Park back. There's a good chance Hamilton doesn't really want it, and they're willing to.
Oh, but they do want the money. They want more than a buck a year.
They do want the money, but here's the thing: is we know. Burlington knows they have the upper hand in that negotiation. They know Hamilton is itching to sell. Hamilton doesn't really want it. They want a smooth transaction. Burlington has a lot of bargaining power.
Does it? Hamilton's got it. We can sit on it forever, or we can sell it to developers. Which way do you want?
Okay, but
how do you want to play this?
Well, they sell it to developers, but I guess who knows? Maybe they will. Maybe they would say they'll sell to developers. I don't know. But
Hamilton have the strong hand, to be honest.
Fair enough. In which case, then do you really want to kind of? But if Burlington goes forward with this buying of Bateman High, they kind of throw, this is what they're willing to do. They're willing to dig down this deep to purchase this little school in the east end of Burlington. Okay, well then you can you can dig deep into your reserves too to get us, what's to stop the city of Hamilton from approaching a developer and say, we don't, give us let's get a good bidding war going to get this plot of land then.
Yeah, there've been shots fired already. The delightful Councillor Marula moved a motion, I think last year, basically saying, investigate our other options, investigate what's Burlington willing to pay and what a developer's willing to pay. Now, Councillor Marula's being Councillor Marula there to an extent, but the rest of council voted on the motion too, and it passed. They're saber rattling for sure. I think ultimately everybody would like to get something worked out. But
I just think that this thing is wrapped up still in so much secrecy and so much it's disingenuous to bring this to the public with such little information really attached to it, in my opinion, and say, hey, do you want us to move forward or not? Because maybe we'll get it for a steal. Here's my question. What are we willing to walk away? Like what is the, at what point are you just going to say, this is too rich for my blood and I'm going to walk away? And that's what I haven't, there's a difference between building something new. If they wanted to, it's like this. They're trying to make this panacea, right? They're going to build it, and it's going to be perfect, everything for all people. And I'm like, really? Because I've never heard of a project like this ending well for anyone. And if you realize, if you're now showing people, hey, this is what we need it for, you're telling me that developers aren't going to say, yeah, I'll bleed you dry. Because here's the thing. Here's the other thing. Right now, this is why it's a bad. I just think this is a bad call for Burlington. If I was a developer, and I'm looking at the Centennial, or sorry, the Bateman High, here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to go and bid the hell out of it. I'm just going to go and just throw in massive bid after massive bid just to try and rack up the price tag to the point where I know you can't back out now. You've bought it for, everyone's mortgage and then some. And then, what I want is that LaSalle property. That's what I want, because there's nothing there. It's just a pavilion and some boats. You buy it from Hamilton for a decent song. You say, yeah, Burlington can't compete. They've spent all their money, all their political capital on a high school that they're going to be forever renovating and gutting. Meanwhile, I'll go and I'll buy LaSalle Park, and my plan is to build up, 3, 4, 5 condo towers there.
Well, time will tell.
I'll flip it for a huge profit.
I mean, ultimately, the throwing public consultations into the mix and saying that cures everything is nonsense. Partly because, it's not nonsense, and it is nonsense. It's not nonsense because what else can you do as an elected official? It is nonsense because public consultations are, what we call engagement is a nonsense. Pull people into a dusty, hot, smelly room, and obviously the vast majority of people have got better things to do with their time than to turn up. Mm-hmm. So you get, if you're lucky, you get 50 people turn up who generally be whiter, maler, older, wealthier kind of people. And you say to them, hey, would you like to buy this Bateman? Because it's up for sale and we can do all these wonderful things. Do you think that's a good idea? And everybody goes, yeah, of course it's a good idea. Because you're not talking about the full picture. You're saying, yeah, everything is a good idea when you're not applying a price tag to it. The same people will be hopping mad when their taxes go up by so many percent in a couple of years, or I've been to so many of these public things where it's like, you're not, the people who come aren't qualified, through no fault of their own, but they don't have the information. And then they're being asked to judge something. Like, what do you think about the city's tall building criteria? And it's like, well, what the hell do I know? I'm not an architect. I don't, with the best will in the world, I can't really make an informed decision because you're not giving me the information that I need. And here we're asking people to consult on something where we've established that the city doesn't want to tell anybody the full picture. It's the catch-22 of public consultations in many ways anyway. But, if you think that just having a couple of public meetings solves everything, then it doesn't.
That's the thing. Like, these public meetings are not going to solve it because people are going to show up and say, well, what's the point? What? Here's the thing. Ask a specific question to the public. Go up. And wouldn't it be great if they actually asked, what are, give the people, like, are you comfortable with us spending $500 million spread over so many years to purchase this? Are you comfortable with us going into the reserves to purchase this? Like, ask specifics of people and get their opinions on this, because that's the thing. That's what they're afraid. They're afraid of it when you say, "Hey, are you comfortable with us spending $500 million on that in total on this project between purchasing the land and then renovating the costs?" Because most people say, "Well, no, I'm not comfortable with that." Or just say, "Are you comfortable with this?"
And even still, even if if it's done, okay, they stick it on the city website, and so many people turn up at the website and fill it in. They have a public meeting at the ice rink or wherever, and 50, maybe let's say 100, let's say 150 people turn up. It's completely unrepresentative of anything. The people, self-selecting groups of people who turn up to things are not representative. Now, I mean, I've had this very argument with the mayor in person. There's like, you can't take the people who turn up at meetings as representative of the city, and you can't look down on people who don't go to those meetings, somehow say that, well, you didn't turn up, so it's your fault. Like, no, because that's not, this isn't democracy. It's not like they've been given the opportunity to vote and not taken it. You've got a busy damn life, and also you're asking them to go somewhere to participate. I mean, Hamilton did the best job that I've seen in recent years when it did the consultation on the boundary expansion. It actually sent questionnaires to people's houses. Now, that's still not perfect. There's no perfect answer to any of this, including an election. There's no perfect referendum. They have all kinds of problems. However, they went above and beyond. They contacted tens of thousands of people. I can't remember the exact number now. And they got a very clear result. And it's like now the developers still poured scorn on it and said it was biased and unrepresentative and inaccurate. But actually, they went far further, compared with the average city consultation on anything, which is laughably pathetic. Hamilton actually went to great lengths to do a better job than usual and deserves some credit for that.
And you know what? I think that's where we'll end off for today's episode. So thanks very much, everyone, for listening. We'll be back next week with more of the 905 for podcasts. Thanks, everyone. Take care.
Bye.
That's it for this episode of the 905er. Thank you for listening. As always, you can send us your feedback, thoughts, and concerns or ideas for future episodes to our email, info@905er.ca. We'd love to hear from you. You can help us keep the 905er going by financially supporting us through Patreon as well as PayPal. Visit us at 905er.ca and click on the support tab. As well, links are in the show notes for your convenience. Lastly, you can find us on social media. Search for _905er on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and LinkedIn. So long for now. See you next time.